So let me close the door too, just to
Oh
make
yeah,
sure
go
nobody
on.
makes a bunch of noise.
Good. Man, I need to get the office fridge though.
They know that's like the bat signal. We're about to record, so don't make any noise when they see that.
That's great. I'm upstairs, so I need to put a do not disturb sign on mine because I still get the squirrels that come upstairs. I have a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they'll pop in here like, dude, can you turn off the screen time, or can you let my device join the network, or whatever it is. So thank you, okay, just off the bat for being here and sharing a little time. I've seen you on panels. I've seen buzz about your coding fantasticness and wanting to create more representation in that space. And I'm just super curious about who you are and what you're all about. So as we already chatted a little bit about, I'm hoping to craft a picture of what Black excellence looks like, and tap a little bit into some of your personal passions and motivators, and any gems you might drop about, you know, the things that keep you in it and pursuing, you know, higher ground day by day. So maybe to start, and what I usually do is I try to, you know, kind of come from the historically, like what got you to be here, what is here, and, you know, what's next, what are you looking for? So
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe start there.
Short bio then.
Yeah.
All right. So I have been writing software for about 32 years. And I tell people that not to brag that whole time I was like Zuckerberg, just like heads down, but it was much more of like a hobby. So when I was a kid, both my parents were school teachers. So I didn't have a lot of fancy toys and stuff. But when these computers came out, this was like a thing, and you could get a personal computer in your home, and but you couldn't, there wasn't like there is today where you get the internet and you got, you know, you got all the software. If you wanted to make it work, you could turn it on and then you could just start typing, and like it would do some things, right? Because it had a basic operating system. And then you had to, you know, and then you had to write, if you needed something, you had to write it. So I learned like GW Basic, and I could write these little grade book applications my parents could use to print out little report cards for the. So I probably got a whole bunch of kids in a mess of trouble, right?
Where were you? What part of the country?
So I grew up in outside of Boston. So I grew up in the suburbs outside of Boston. Was there until we were about 12 or so. And then we moved here to San Diego. So, you know, I'm an East Coast transplant to San Diego.
Why the move?
So my grandfather had really bad health. He had gone to Vietnam, and he had like one lung, and the winters in Boston are just, you know, terrible. So he needed to move to a warm weather climate. So he moved out, and then we came to visit during winter break, right? Okay, so
say no more.
Like, you know,
boom,
that's
done.
it. Boom. Like Disneyland. Like, okay, parents were making plans on the flight back for like selling the house and moving in the summer. It was just like, that's it. So I have really great memories. Lots of family that, you know, still live on the East Coast and love, you know, the Cape. I got some family that lives down the Cape. So it still feels like home, but I can appreciate going back and enjoying the snow and not having to shovel it. Just being able to get back on the plane and come back to San Diego.
Yes.
So
got it. So you've been here since then, since 12 years old.
So right about when, you know, 12, 13 was when we moved. And that was right about when I started to kind of like be interested in, hey, what can this thing do? And, you know, kids being kids, you know, trying to, you know, what can we break? What can we do with it? Can we build, you know, like little fractals and games and all these kinds of things? And so it was just a hobby for a really long time. And then I was a terrible student. So I was an embarrassment to the entire family. My parents were always like, you're going to work at a gas station. And I'm like, what's wrong with a gas station? Like, I had no perception of that being a bad thing. And they kind of, you know, encouraged me to, you know, maybe not even go to college for CS. They were like, you know, maybe you should get like an accounting degree. So as a traditional, you know, as most Black families are, they don't, it's not an entrepreneurial journey supportive environment. It's more of a pick something that's secure.
That's what my man is trying to say with this. You know, ownership is the new Black, to try to motivate people.
Exactly. And so I kind of, you know, fought that a little bit. And so I, you know, when I was younger, I wanted to be a DJ. And so I was, you know, more interested in doing those things than going to school. But I eventually figured out that, after about the 10-year plan at San Diego State, let me get my degree finished. And the route by which I completed my degree was I transitioned to, at the time, it's very novel. It was like an online program that you could get your degree online. And they even accepted certifications for like, Microsoft and A+, and they would give credit. And I could complete my degree if I just finished a few more classes and then got a few certifications. So I became a Microsoft certified systems engineer. I got a Cisco certification, got an A+ certification, because I believed if I got those certifications, I could finally sort of transition into a tech role. I didn't know what that was going to be, but I thought that was the path.
Yeah.
So I got my degree and then realized that wasn't the key, and those certificates were not the key. But I was still sort of doing it as a hobby, and eventually I kind of figured out a little side hustle. I was teaching and I was doing some training, and I was like, I could build web-based training modules and use some of these fun programming skills. That later led to like, okay, I actually have more work than I can handle, so maybe I can hire a couple of people. Next thing you know, I was running an agency. I had 12 developers, and I was building learning management systems. So it kind of just took off. And when it did, it was like amazing, because now, eventually sold that, went to work at startups and things like that. It was just like, man, I'm getting to live this lifestyle of like dogs in the office and catered breakfast and lunch and unlimited PTO. You work in downtown San Diego, you get a view of the bridge, and it's just like living this privileged life. I was just like, this is phenomenal. But I was always one where I wanted to help other people, and so I joined the San Diego JavaScript community, and we're having meetups, and I was hosting meetups in the office. Boss was just like, don't break anything, but if you want to host the meetup here, go out, have at it. Don't drink all the beer, but enjoy yourselves. And so that sort of got me more interested in like, maybe there's a way I could help more
service, be of service,
and be of more service to folks. And so started getting a little closer. We started the phenomena of boot camps became a thing. And so it sort of dabbled in it, experimented in it, and finally, I went to a demo day. Jeff Winkler at Origin, he suckered me into coming to a demo day, and I was almost in tears. I was just like, okay, I guess I gotta help you now, because these are amazing stories.
So now you're speaking a different language to me. I don't know what demo day is. I don't know why.
Okay, so for a coding boot camp, it's sort of like the culmination at the end of usually like a 16-week program or 12-week program. They work on usually some kind of like a capstone project, and then pretty much every program has this like day that the students get to show off their work, and it's graduation, the pictures, the certificates, and all that. But you hear the stories, and you're just like, people talking about how I got out of prison and now I'm looking forward to a career in technology, or I was homeless and now I'm doing this, and you're just like, how can I not want to like get involved in stories like this and help people that are just having these amazing transformations in their in their personal lives. And me coming from the space where I'm just like, oh my God, like somebody that's homeless is gonna, next thing you know, have dogs in the office. Like that's insane. How do I help make that happen? So I went work for Jeff for a couple of years, and then they closed. This is a very difficult environment. And so they closed, and I started San Diego Code School, and I've been doing that for the last 2.5, almost 3 years now. So,
and is it a similar format? So tell us. Okay, so now here we are. San Diego Code School. Tell me what this is. So what were you doing with Jeff, and how are you reapplying that to now in the world of San Diego Code School? What is this about?
Yeah, so both, I really admired, one of the qualities I admired about Jeff as an entrepreneur is he really wanted to solve hard problems. And so it was never just about like, let's scale and make a bunch of money. It was always like, how do we create the best experience for students? How do we make it more affordable? How do we make it more accessible? So I knew as soon as I started a program, I wanted to double down on what we already saw working, and I wanted to create more opportunities for affordability, more opportunities to have it in the community where I could serve more people that look like me. So it's like, all right, well, how do I tackle each of those problems? And so we set about creating opportunities to fix each of those. Like when we started San Diego Code School, we started with the knowledge and knowing that most of our students couldn't just give up working altogether. They needed to at least work part-time. But I also knew it didn't work to go to school part-time and try and work full-time. That learning to code is enormously difficult, and so it can't be a part-time thing. If you're going to do it in a short period, it's got to be like you're fully immersed. It's like learning a language, right? You got to go to the country, you got to live in the country, and then you can learn it quickly, but you got to be fully immersed. You can't be doing it part-time on the side. That's no good. So I was like, well, why don't we just teach full-time classes on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and then why don't we have the students the rest of the week, they got to put in at least, the other 20, 30 hours. So they get to 40 hours of classroom. And then we basically just tell people you can work part-time, but you can't work full-time. So if you create an opportunity for people by being flexible with your scheduling, that was the hypothesis, that was the experiment. Maybe we can get higher quality outcomes because we're sort of like working within that framework of they still have to have some income to survive and make it through the process without being completely stressed out, right? That they're broke, like no one wants to be living that broke college student lifestyle, right?
So how many weekends? Okay, go on, I'm listening.
So that was 16 weeks. And then we broke it into a front-end program because some people just like, look, I just want to do 8 weeks and then get a front-end job. So we broke it into a front-end program, a back-end program. And that was just sort of the second evolution. And then the third evolution is the one that we're on now, which is we're like, why don't we just make our jobs that much tougher? Why don't we just hire the students? Why don't I find a way that I can create like a way that they don't have to worry about work at all? Let's just hire them. Can we figure out how to do that? And so then it made all the sense in the world because I was like, wait, isn't that like an apprenticeship? Isn't that like what the plumbers and the carpenters and stuff do? So then I started asking and I was like, hey, are there any people that are doing this? Like, is there a law against doing this as is software engineering a trade? Is this something that we can do? And so that sort of started this whole process of like, oh man, once I realized that like no one was really doing this. Like the day I talked to our person in the state and I was like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think of this? And he was like, I was like, is that a good or is that a bad? Like, what's your thought process? He's like, no, that's very interesting. I've not heard of this ever before. And then I knew we're onto something.
You're like, aha, magic.
And then it was like, okay, well, why aren't they doing it? Right. And then we have all those questions, but it led me to believe like, okay, so it's probably hard. We're humans. So if anything's hard and it doesn't have a huge payoff, it's probably not that many people doing it. So then it's like, okay, but does it align for the student? Does this really, and there's like, it checks all the boxes for the student. All right, let's figure it out. So that's what we're doing now. So we basically hire people. We pay them to go through what we used to charge people for our immersive coding bootcamp. So we don't charge them. They don't owe us anything. They don't have like, if they don't get a job or something, they have to pay us money and none of that stuff. It's just like, it truly is as good as it sounds. Now we can't, I can't hire 100 people, but like I can open up a cohort, I can hire folks, train them. And then the way we fund the program is we work with partners like Beck and Dickinson, right? And we say, hey, you need diverse candidates. We can train people and we can supply you with diverse candidates. You just got to pay for a little premium that's associated with like us training them and like providing them for you, which, they already do.
Do you know Jason Stewart?
The name sounds familiar.
Oh, so he's kind of headhunter guy in tech, kind of helping to do the same thing, right? Like everyone's trying to crack that nut of pipelining talent. And wow.
There's an enormous demand. There's way more supply of jobs than there are talented people to fill the roles. And so it's tricky. Big companies, they got a lot on their hands right now.
So then, this is interesting. Well, can you imagine eventually tailoring the program almost to fit the specs of the recs,
Oh yeah. So that's already been, a very important part of how I've thought about our program and how I think Jeff thought about his program. I know for sure this is how because Jeff started his program teaching a very unorthodox curriculum. And the curriculum that he chose was aligned with what was in the industry. He's like, I'm going to teach C# and Angular because in San Diego, employers are looking for people with C# and Angular experience. So I'm just going to start with teaching them that. So when I came in and I saw that he was teaching, I'm like, Jeff, this is a brutal curriculum. This is really hard for new people. It's a lot. This is a lot. And so we kind of
Wow.
had to adjust, and we had to sort of have conversations with
Mm,
employers to say, is it really the technology that you're interested in, or is it the transferable skills? Can we
yes,
teach them a
yes.
tech stack that's a little bit more easy to sort of get
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
get comfortable with, and then
yeah,
use transferable skills to then learn C Sharp and Angular? Are
yeah,
you, but we had to have that conversation with employers. We had
yeah,
to ask them, are you okay
yeah,
with this? And
yeah.
then validate it by seeing them hire folks. And
Wow.
once they did, we say, okay, we did the experiment, we
Uh,
validated the model.
yeah.
Now we know moving forward,
Mm,
when we start thinking about, hey, what are their opportunities out in a
mm,
space? Then we can say, these employers are looking for this skill. Let's
mm,
train them in that.
mm.
Versus the other way around, which it frustrates me enormously when I hear
Yeah.
people say, there's all these grants, you should be teaching people cybersecurity. And I'm like, no one's hiring junior engineers for cybersecurity.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
would you? Do you want a
Yeah.
brand new person handling your
Yeah,
security for your network?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So sure, there are opportunities for people
Yeah,
that to get into cybersecurity in the entry
yeah,
level, but it's not
yeah,
a place where there's a high volume of
yeah,
entry level
yeah, yeah,
candidates.
yeah,
It's not the same as like front end user experience, so front end web
yes,
development.
yeah,
Tons of opportunity there, right? Tons of
yes,
space for people to come in and have
yeah,
great careers and then transition, right? They could go
yeah,
from being a front end web developer, so they
yeah,
make, websites, to being working on embedded devices and being someone that's like building the software that runs on
yeah,
your watch, right,
yeah,
or inside of
yeah,
a car.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can start in one place and then sort of just like have a career
yeah.
trajectory that takes you into these places that are just like
Wow.
amazing.
So, okay, this is fantastic. So you are an educator at the end of the day. This is what
Sure.
I'm getting,
Yep.
man. This is a school here, a way of thinking and doing things. So talk to me about the diversity piece, right? So you mentioned people that look like me, people that look like we. How does that come into play in your recruitment? And you said something about being in communities, and I think I'm here like in Poway RB, and I think you're
Mhm.
right up the road here.
So I have a campus in, I mean, I live right now in Poway, so
Yeah.
headquarters is Poway.
Oh,
So we're
man, where you
close. We're
at?
neighbors, yeah. So
There's just a whole, we can have a whole offshoot on Black and Poway Unified School District. We can have a whole
yes.
conversation.
Well, that's the thing. So for people that are not from San Diego that are listening to this,
Yes,
people in San Diego know
yeah.
the best public school district in San Diego County is Poway
Poway,
Unified.
Poway
And so if
Unified.
you want to send your kids to public school and you
Yeah,
want the best public schools,
yeah.
you buy a house in Poway,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah. But it's also not the most diverse of
It
places,
is
Poway
not.
itself. So there's the
It is
Unified
not.
School District, which stretches across multiple kind of jurisdictions in San Diego, and Poway itself happens to be a city that
Mhm.
stands alone. And
Yep.
so kind of those things are kind of interesting to me too sometimes. So we moved into the city of Poway from Mira Mesa, which is a much more diverse place,
This.
and have been having all those conversations in our
So
family about the pros and cons of the education and the access and all that versus
absolutely.
the downside, you know. So
I when I my grandparents moved here, they moved to San Diego. So
mm,
they were in the city. They were
yeah,
in Skyline neighborhood.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So Southeast San Diego in
Southeast, yeah,
Canto,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Woo woo. Yeah,
my parents were like, we're educators.
yeah,
We'll work for the district. So they both worked for San Diego Unified School
yeah,
District for a really long time.
yeah.
But they're like, but we're gonna live in where the best public schools are.
Got
So
it. Got it. So so was that up here?
so we moved. Yeah. So when I was growing up,
Yeah.
I went to Mount Carmel. I lived in Rancho Penasquitos.
Wow.
So and at the
Wow.
time it was Rancho Penasquitos. So we had my first year as a freshman, and I'm gonna date myself
Woo,
seriously here.
woo. Come on, let's go.
First year, um, Rancho Bernardo High School had not opened yet,
Yeah.
and so they were on trailers on our campus, in the back of our campus, and so they were walking around with their Letterman jackets on our campus, and we were just like beefing hardcore with RB. And but it was just annoyed because we're just like, why are you in our space?
Yes,
Like
yes.
you're wearing
No,
your
that's
Letterman jackets
funny.
on our campus.
Oh, that's funny.
But Poway was the big rival. And at the
Yeah.
time, Poway was way less diverse than it is even today. It
Oh,
was like you don't even drive into Poway. You just like stay in Penasquitos. Like you go as far
yes.
as Sabre Springs and then you
Yes.
stop. Don't
Yes.
drive into Poway.
Yes.
No,
Oh man.
it was
Man.
not. There's no reason to be there.
Oh
And when
man.
we took the bus to Poway High School to play, run track or something, it was like you get off the bus, you go straight there. You get back on the bus, we come back to Penasquitos.
Oh, really like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
What
that.
sports did you play?
So I ran track and in cross
Oh,
country. I was a hurdler.
wow.
Yeah. I was a
Well, yeah,
hurdler.
because I noticed that we went to one football game. I think there was like one young brother. So this is like I watched the Poway RB game or something, and I was
Yeah.
like
Not that many
looking
of you.
around the stands, like, damn, where did we just ended up somewhere that's not so diverse.
Yeah.
So
It's getting
been
better. I mean, it's getting better because there's now, it's very well known that this is the place where the better schools are. And so families are just like, you know what, I'm just going to live here. I don't care if my neighbor is going to put a Trump flag up in his front yard. It's like, I don't care. Put a Biden Harris sign out in my yard, right? And that you have to have that mentality of like, doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to let it deter me from like feeling like I belong here and making sure my kids have the opportunity to go to the best schools that are available, that are public schools. Right? We don't have private funds, and I believe in supporting the public education system. So,
Wow.
it is what it is.
Wow. So then back to the question about recruitment and kind of that lens, the diversity lens. Is that an overt conversation you're having with students as they come in? And like,
I want to, okay, so now I got to give the caveats. I got to get legalese caveats.
sure.
We are an equal opportunity employer, right? And so the way that I can influence that and impact that in a legal way is we just overly recruit in areas that are predominantly Black, Latinx, women, LGBTQ. So rather than us just being like, we're going to advertise equally, it's like, well, no, we're going to be down there in a location that's accessible to people in the community. And we're going to proactively go out and like recruit with organizations that are like focused on helping and supporting that community. So we're going to work with like San Diego State's Pre-College Institute. We're going to work with San Diego County Office of Education, Juvenile and Community Court Schools, right? We're going to align ourselves intentionally with Just in Time. They do great foster youth that are aging out of the system. So we specifically say, I'm just going to over recruit and go into the schools.
Excuse me.
Right. And that's how you then generate like, 90% of our applicants fit the demographic that we really hope and help to serve. And then, I'm not against, I have white apprentices. I have Asian apprentices. So, but if you look at our demographics are where I hope much closer to what reflects the actual population of San Diego and the people that are, I think, most deserving of an opportunity. That's where I really want to make sure we're making an impact. It's not necessarily just Black or just women. It's like, who are traditionally underrepresented, and we kind of level the playing field by creating an opportunity for them to have access to something that they ordinarily wouldn't have access to.
Man, oh man, you were like singing my song, man. You were singing my song.
It's fun stuff. Like, I love doing this.
Man,
it's just amazing.
I would love to check out one of these. So do you have capstone graduation moments as well where there are these stories?
We did when we were doing the tuition-based program. So we had them. We pull out the camera and record them. They weren't great recordings, but it was a big deal, right? Every time we were doing those, we'd have all the current students, we'd have alumni come, parents and families, because it really is, it's tough. And so a lot of the success of the students is really like their family supporting them and rallying around them while they're in this like intense period of their life where they're making this big shift. So it's a huge celebration, super fun. Once we're back in person, once COVID is over, I'm sure we'll return to having regular opportunities for us to celebrate when people are completing the program. It's a little different now though, because they basically should be celebrating like maybe we'll do like a signing ceremony or something, because they are basically hired at the very beginning of the process. So I intentionally wanted to create an environment where when people make it, when they're in the apprenticeship, we have beautiful office in Southeast San Diego, like just, these giant screen TVs and mob workstations, and just like, I want them to feel like they've just walked onto the campus of Google and they have made it. They belong there, and now it's just like, let's execute on what you need to learn and how do you need to perform for you to keep the job that you've already basically like, we've identified you have talent. We have identified that you belong in this industry. Now it's just like, you're on this journey let's get you to senior software engineer. That's not going to happen in the first year, but like, let's get you on that path. Let's help you not be stressed out about the job search, not be stressed about your finances. Just focus on learning and getting better every day. And then we'll have enough people that are out there, they can come back and they can start, being the next wave of hiring managers. And I've seen that happen over the course of 6 years. The proudest moments are when we do job fairs, right? And then we have our former students coming back and being sort of like the hiring decision makers that are screening for students that are just graduating. That's just like, when you see that, it's just like,
come on, man, come on. Oh man! So sign me up. Is there an app? Can I sign? This is a beautiful thing.
It is still somewhat an experience that unfortunately we don't have enough partners that we can do it like massive scale. Wow. But that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to say, we got this so dialed in. We can take this, we can drop it into even a small city, and even a small city has the capacity for them to retrain workers that are being displaced by COVID, that are being displaced by the elimination of some of these frontline jobs. And there's a ton of opportunity, and these are jobs that people are fully capable of doing.
I'm curious about what the potential analog might be in biotech, as you're saying it, because I've had kind of these anecdotal one-off conversations about boot camps and summer trainings and meetups and cohorts of the vanguard and finding, it's like getting a group and getting them in the spots and tracking them and wrap around, the family comes out and we all go do this thing. Because it feels like that opportunity exists here because of, the critical mass of biotech, like we were talking about. And so I'm curious now, what the reception is, in corporate. So you've got partners where you're pulling from. When you turn the other way and look, if you had to identify people that see where you have traction or are supportive, I know you said BD already. Do you have, because that's often what I'm looking for, are organizations in this town that are raising their hand and saying, we're looking. And
so the good news is, so we'll start with the good news. San Diego's a classy town, and we have a lot of startups, and our vibrant startup community is like biggest champion of diversity and inclusion ever. They are just, and part of it is, it's slightly opportunistic, right? They need to be able to have access to affordable talent, right? So I get that part, but they really do go above and beyond because they're laying out so much and they're risking so much, and then they get poached, right? So they take on training somebody, and then they can't afford to like give them a $20,000 pay bump when the big guy comes a knocking and says, hey, don't you want to insert big brand name? Well, don't you want to work here? So there's a lot of churn for those folks. So they put in an outsized amount of effort to contribute to the ecosystem. So I have to give it up to the San Diego ecosystem of startups that really makes it happen. Because I'm not I wasn't a great student. I didn't go to UCSD. So I'm not as connected with the biotech side of San Diego, but we are just starting to kind of, I feel like, scratch the surface. And I feel like there's enough in the innovation economy. There's enough in the biotech sector here in San Diego that we can provide, countless opportunities for folks, as long as we just start kind of like making those connections.
I'm telling you. So, we are, for one, like the epicenter of all things genomic, right? By virtue of having Illumina here, that goes without saying. I sometimes want them to get more in the community and raise their hand and open the doors and let us know like how to interact and what they're here to do.
Exactly.
There's, the whole Wireless Life Science Association. I know that exists. I'm not sure how vibrant it is, but again, it seems like the opportunity at the intersection of Qualcomm and like Illumina, and name any other biotech company, that there's something there, where San Diego could actually carve out a niche that's a little different than like the Bay or Boston.
Oh yeah, for sure.
More pure bench play,
There's an article that just came out today that from Connect, and Connect was talking about how amazing, and I was just like so proud when I read it, because it's talking about all these different really great ways that our economy, we raised a bunch of money, like billions of dollars. We actually outraised in venture capital. I think for the first time I've ever seen it, Seattle, and like just off the chain in the last, whatever the segment it was over the last year, last quarter.
I gotta go
numbers,
check that out.
They seem phenomenal, because that's the biggest thing people are always talking about. Like, where's the money? There's no venture capital in San Diego. So so that's interesting to see that we have sort of these opportunities. There's two challenges. The first challenge is that in the large organizations, they tend to be very top down, and they tend to be driven by sort of like this old sort of mentality and thought process of you got to have a CS degree. So you mentioned Qualcomm. Qualcomm's a great example. Love the folks at Qualcomm. I've done, we've done some work partnerships with Qualcomm.
No shade.
So no, I'm not going to throw any shade, but I am going to, just be genuine about. It's very clear that they still haven't made the pivot and said that we will hire software engineers that do not have a CS degree. They still have a company mandated policy that is, they may not hire software engineers that don't have a CS degree. So those barriers, until those come down, it's nearly impossible for this process to work. So you got to do that part. You got to first break some of like the just, hey, we got to evolve. We got to figure out how to get. And then the second is there, you have to have people that are willing to like, do things differently. Like beyond just like, okay, you've taken the rule away. So we have those companies. We have companies that say, oh no, we don't have a hard requirement. They don't have to have a CS degree. But then they're still like, but we need them to have 4 years of experience. And they're still on like the senior engineer thing. So what I hope is that many of them will identify and recognize that if they become more involved earlier on in the process, like if they start investing at the middle school, at the high school level, they can create a much better pipeline into these STEM careers, because I think they're sort of like abdicating that like training process to the traditional four-year institutions. And frankly, it's not working. So if you see it's broken and you see people are upset about the cost of it, it's like, okay, well, you're the company. Push for what you want. Start creating these academies, these summer programs, start sponsoring things, clubs, activities that get you, because let's look at it like athletes, right? The athletes, the pro athletes, and even the colleges to some extent, they want to get in there and they want to get access to the kids as young as they can. They want them playing a single sport, right? They're like, hey, we want you single sport. We want you doing a club, etc. We need to have that same philosophy if we want to create top tier STEM talent. Get them involved super early, be super engaged, and then eventually we will have the top talent in the country or in the world. If we don't take that approach, we'll continue to get beat because other people will be willing to do that.
Do you have, pardon me?
They just are. They're just willing to do that. They're willing.
So then you say that like, do you know of or have models or have seen examples? Have you seen that sort of, corporate commitment?
Well, I'll say this. Part of it is that the way that apprenticeship works, the levers of our government, it only works at like big numbers for most cases. So not to get into too much of the weeds on this, but like the way that the funding and the way that government incentivizes companies, it might work for IBM because they might be doing like 100 apprentices a year. And so for them, they're getting a check back from the government that's like $300,000, right? But if it's, let's say the reimbursement's like $3,000, that's not enough to incentivize like Tesla. If they need, they're going to do 10 a year, 10 a year, they can't hire a program manager. They can't do all of the things to just get, and literally they'll just hire the person to be like, oh, it's not worth all the tax stuff, but we got to go pay for it. We'll just hire the person and train them, right? The approach that like the UK takes, the UK and Europe, the government heavily subsidizes it. And the government says like, we're going to make sure that like, the industry recognizes that this is in the benefit. And so we'll just incentivize them with much bigger numbers. And then here in the US, it's like, a few of the big ones or companies that are truly committed to it. Right. So like Twilio, they've been running one for a really long time. Lyft, they've been running one for a really long time. So you've got these progressive organizations that say, let's just do it.
Right. Man, this is inspiring. So then, are there other folks like you in San Diego?
Well, what's like me? I feel like I am a unique person.
So the apprenticeship thing is brand new. This has no precedence.
I mean, there are no other tech apprenticeship programs in San Diego. There are other apprenticeships, but they're in the more traditional trades. Right. So the closest other region that has these is I think there's one in LA. There's one program that's like this in LA. There's, San Francisco, you get San Jose, they're crushing it. So these, I hope, will become super popular in a way that, like, the same way everyone does summer internships. I feel like everybody should be doing apprenticeships.
Yes. Wow. Wow. So then so two things, and I know we're up against time a little bit. So tell me, and maybe it's only going to be one thing with this sort of question. What's been the most challenging? So what has, whether in this endeavor now or just lifetime, another way of asking it is, where have you learned the most? Because I find that, everyone knows this. It's often when you get knocked down and get back up that you're like, oh, okay, I'll see that one coming next time. Or from that, I learned all these things.
Yeah.
What's
for
been
me,
the most challenging thing?
It's still a challenge, and that's, I have to have more patience, and I have to just know that opportunities will avail themselves, and like just at the point where you're about to just give up and just be like, this is not working, suddenly, the plan was in place all along and you didn't know it, but like the plan was there. And so as soon as you start to put your head down and say, oh, wait, there's the opportunity. See, all right, it's all worth it. And so for me, that's the hardest part, is just like, because it makes so much common sense. And like, we've worked so hard to create an opportunity that de-risks it for the student, it de-risks it for the employers. I'm just like, why are not people not just
knocking down your door?
Why is my phone not ringing off? If everybody really cares about Black lives, if everybody really cares about diversity, why is my phone not ringing off the hook? And you have to just constantly tell yourself, as an entrepreneur, you're doing the good work and eventually you'll get the opportunity. And you just have to be kind of like ready to jump on the opportunity when it comes. But like, you're not guaranteed it. It's not like, I'm not entitled to a break. I'm not entitled to someone saying, oh, we're going to throw a bunch of money your way and like make your life easy. What I have to just wrestle with every day is the ups and downs, the roller coaster of any entrepreneurial journey. And for my sake, I try and like now compartmentalize it and say, all right, this isn't going to happen on my time. It's going to happen on the time that is God's plan. God's plan is it's going to take another 3 months. We're going to celebrate in 3 months.
Got you, man. See, now you like walked in the faith space. You got to get me all started, man. So then what is, like, if you did have, a prayer about it or some sort of, objective in it that would feel most supportive to put out in the space, is it a corporate sponsorship or
so
take venture money? Like how do you see?
Venture would be tough because this isn't like code schools, and education in general is not a great scalable, something that you can meet that insatiable appetite of more growth. That's not how education typically works. And so as an impact investor, we'd love to have more people that were interested in helping our nonprofit. We're actually transitioning everything over to our nonprofit. So in essence, our operation is going to be a nonprofit moving forward. So obviously that means if we can find more champions that are willing to say, hey, this is a great cause, donate to it. But also, I just hope that we get to the point where we can really prove this national model. And so it doesn't require, tens or hundreds of organizations. It really requires just a few more to jump on board, and then for it to just like spread like wildfire. That would be the greatest thing ever, is if we could be a thought leader in this space and have every city have 5-6 companies that say, yeah, we could do apprenticeship. Like, we can follow the San Diego Code Schools model. Like, that works. That's when we start winning, because then I can focus on, hey, maybe we now need to start working on some more pre-apprenticeship opportunities. Maybe we need to work on people re-entering, from prison. Maybe we need to work on helping veterans that are transitioning. And we no longer have to prove the efficacy of the model itself. Now it's about, how do we widen the funnel and get more people into it? Where can we like pop it up in new locations? So that's what I'm looking forward to, because I don't think it's an if, I think it's a when.
Oh man, I'm like inspired here. This is fantastic. I'm so pleased that I like cross paths with you, and can't wait to kind of, fan the fire, man, wherever I can. It's such exciting. It's such a joy and a pleasure to know that you're out there. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. And I love it. Whenever I'm talking to someone that's a Black engineer inside organizations, they're always like, keep doing it. Like,
I
need more folks.
Oh, I'm sure, man. We're gonna have to leave it there for right now, man. That was
Yeah,
like a
absolutely.
short, quick hit. But let me hit the stop over here, and just.